Hello again. In this video we are going to discuss basic Ethernet communications between an HMI and device or between two HMIs. So let's get started. Here we have an example of the most common configuration. You've got your HMI and your PLC. In this configuration, there are two IP addresses that need to be set. You need to set your PLC IP address, which is done in System Parameters under the Device tab. When you select your driver here, you go to Settings, and here's where you actually set that IP address and a couple of other settings. Now, I want to point this out because later on when we get into some other stuff, we're going to talk about port numbers. But when you originally select a driver, the port number will automatically be populated, and the developers did a great job on being sure that all of these were correct. So generally when you first select a driver, if it's HMI to device direct communications, it's a good idea to not change the port number unless you've got another good reason to do it. So this is where you set the actual PLC or device IP address. Now, in this example, there's one more IP address that needs to be set. Now that we have the device IP address defined, now we need to go ahead and set the HMI's IP address, and that's generally done locally. Here I have an MT-8050IE, and you would want to go ahead and log into the local settings. And under the Network tab, this is where you would set the IP address. Now in this live example here, I'm actually using a dynamic IP address because I've got it on my network to show you the example. But if you wanted to set a static IP address, of course you would check this radio button here and enter in all of the information as needed, and then click Apply or OK. So now these two devices should be able to talk. In this scenario, you could have multiple devices talking to each other. You could have an HMI and a PLC talking through a switch. Then you could add a VFD or even connect PC that could talk to all these devices simultaneously, or even multiple PLCs directly through the switch or through the IT network. Now, as a general rule, all of these devices would require a unique IP address on the same network. Now, to put that simply, the IP addresses need to be the same except for the last segment. That number needs to be different, and as a general rule you may want to avoid 1 because that on most networks is your gateway. Now there are some instances that we won't get into today on some communication bus protocols that require the same IP address but have a different station number. In this scenario, we will be setting up communications between two HMIs. Now please note, if you are not using a switch between the two HMIs, it's recommended that you use a crossover cable. In this example, we will be setting up communication between two HMIs, in this case a cMT-3090 and an MT-8050IE. I'm going to start out with the 8050IE. Now there are a couple things we have to do here in the configuration besides just add the remote HMI. So we're going to start out and we're going to add an HMI, and I'm going to call this remote HMI. So we'll go ahead and click our settings and enter the IP address of the remote HMI. Now in this case we need to use a different port, so we're going to use port 8010. Click OK. Now we want to go to the Model tab. And since we are talking to a cMT device, our remote HMI is a cMT device. So we want to go ahead and click that. And if you'll notice, it says port 8010. And on this unit, I want to go ahead and enable VNC, so I can bring it up here to show on your for the video's sake. Now on the cMT model, we want to go ahead and click New HMI. Go ahead and set it up the same way. And I happen to know the IP address on that one is 105. Since we are talking to an IE model, we need to go ahead and do that. Port 8010. Click OK. Now on the cMT, I'm going to go ahead and put a toggle switch. And we're going to talk to the remote HMI, LB0. Oh, one tip. When you are, I've noticed when you are doing a remote HMI, even though it's the same address, you'll want to go ahead and check read and write from different address, so it will go ahead and poll the remote HMI and show the state. And we can go ahead and put a bit lamp there too. And then I'm gonna put a bit lamp for local, LB0. And over here on the 8050, we're going to put a local lamp. And we'll put a switch for the remote. And a bit lamp for the remote. So let's go ahead and download these projects. So here I have both the projects up and displaying. I've got the cMT through cMT viewer, and then I've got our 8050 down here we're looking at through VNC viewer. So here you can see I can toggle on our remote bit from here, and you see it comes on. Our local bit on our over on our remote comes on. I can turn on the remote bit on the cMT and the local 8050 bit comes on. And I can turn them off. So it's as simple as that. Thanks for watching, and be sure to come back and see more of our instructional videos.